what's poppin', yo? Welcome back to another YouTube video, and today I did say that, due to, DC having a little bit of a lacking fan base right now, I am gonna try and talk about DC as much as I can, so I have watched Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 2, and I will be taking a look at Part 3 tomorrow, but it is getting harder and harder and harder to, defend and talk about DC, and oh, I am so upset. I am so upset. I wasted an hour and 37 minutes watching this movie, and I am upset because I know I'm going to waste another hour and 30 minutes watching part 3. So there is 3 parts to this movie in total, and I did take a look at part 1 a couple of months back, and the part 1 was mainly focused around the Flash, and part 2 focuses around Batman and Supergirl. So, without any further delay, let's get into what Google has to say. So, Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 2 has a 4 out of 5 on Amazon UK. I don't fucking know how it has that high of a ranking. I cannot fucking lie to you. But an endless army of shadow demons threatens to destroy the world and all parallel Earths. The only thing opposing them is the mighty control combined power of Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, and their fellow superheroes. So how this story actually starts is with Batman fighting the Joker, Killer Croc, and Solomon Grundy at one of the towers they ended up erecting in the first Crisis on Infinite Earths. And they kill off Commissioner Gordon within the first 5 seconds of the movie, by making him a Joker clone and being corrupted by the Joker and I don't know, drugged by the Joker to be a Joker variation, a Joker variant. And then Batman is arguing with Robins, Batgirls, Batwomen, Huntresses from other universes, other parallel Earths, because this Batman is a Batman that works alone and doesn't actually have a family. This then leads to them fighting, getting overrun by the shadow demons, and then learning to work together and stop them. This then sort of makes them realize that as the shadows are retreating, they're all sort of building up to meet at Earth 1 to become this giant mess of shadows. That's the Batman story. We then have the 2 sub-stories, which is Supergirl's story, which is how she became to get on the ship, and she's basically the Watcher's adopted daughter, and she's here to help out. She gets manipulated by Dr. Fate's twin, one of this, the British villain, the stereotypical British villain, and she then goes to kill obviously the Watcher, and I'm 90% sure she succeeds, but we don't actually get to see it. And then the other subplot is the backstory to our British villain who is trying to basically take over all the multiverse throughout this mission. And that is basically the story. They're the 3 subplots that we have, as well as Wonder Woman getting her own, Dr. Fate remembering who he is, and he made a cameo in the first one. Green Lantern giving up being Green Lantern to scare away the shadows. Wonder Woman trying to save her Earth but getting killed in the process. And I'm going to be honest, the story was all over the fucking place. It kept swapping, and obviously Crisis on Infinite Earths means there's infinite amount of superheroes here, and I feel like they've stretched themselves way too thin. There is way too many heroes to be focused on. The Flash has taken a backseat because he's gone missing for whatever reason, and no one can find him. So we don't know where the Flash is, and I'm 90% sure we watched him grow old in the first one, and he was the one that was struggling to finish building this giant tower, and for whatever fucking reason, he's vanished, and now we have to try and find him. And we do see him zip-zapping around in the background, but no one ever comments on it. These waves and these demons don't really pose much of a threat because of how many characters are here, how many variations of Batman, how many variations of Robin. Because there's infinite versions of each character, you don't really give a shit if they live or die because you know there's another Batman, and it's hard to sort of remember which character's which because there's 6 different Batmen, and they all look very similar, so it's very hard to tell which one's which and keep them separate, because one Batman didn't adopt any children and didn't make them into, like, the crime-fighting family that they are. And the other Batman did, and they have differing views, and they argue, and it's a little bit confusing, it's a little bit distracting, a little bit sort of disorientating, and it's not a very clear direction, it's not a very clear, like, story narrative. It's very all over the place, very choppy, and each story that we are following, like I said, with Batman, Supergirl, and this British villain, they're all sort of chopped up into pieces and merged together and, like, slotted in between each other, but it's not in, like, a good continuous flow sort of way. It feels choppy, and it feels like we are switching at bad times, so it isn't like a connected flow, or it isn't like a seamless transition to the other story. It sort of feels very random and sporadic because there is no real time limit to, like, how long we can spend with a certain character or a certain group before we swap to the next one. And again, with dealing with so many characters, some people do it really well, like Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. They dealt with all their characters coming together really nicely, gave them all a decent amount of screen time. But here, again, like I said, with there being infinite Earths, infinite heroes, infinite possibilities, it is a little bit boring, a little bit dry, because there is no threat, there's no danger, there's no nothing to these characters. It doesn't really make you care for them or really want to get to know them, because there is that many variations of these characters that it's hard to follow, and you just don't care, you don't want to invest that much effort into it. Especially with the animation style being so stiff, being so ugly, and very cheap. The animation style feels very cheap, so you don't want to put as much effort into watching this as you would, like, a better animated movie. And DC used to be on top with their animated movies, but they have fallen off as of recent because they've refused to change, they refused to adapt. They're not like Maharaga, they have just stayed the same, thinking that it will fix everything, and they have very similar art styles to that Archer Netflix, like, show, and even that looks shit, and I don't know what it is, but this art style just isn't it. It looks so tacky, so cheap, so ugly, and I really don't like it. It's not a good art style, and it doesn't do anything for the characters. It makes them look really ugly, and again, with all the worlds looking identical, again, being the same art style, being very similar, having similar looking characters with not much differentiating them, it gets very repetitive, it gets very boring and dry, and just there doesn't feel like there's a lot there. There's no real threat or care for any of these characters, and I feel like this story could have been a lot better if their cast of characters was a little bit smaller, and they didn't try and shove every single character in here that they could just to fill out the roster and just to make this movie feel like as infinite Earths as possible. It just feels very oversized, and because it is this oversized story, it does feel like most of the characters do get overlooked or not as much screen time as what they do deserve. It is cool to see some of the interactions between these characters that we wouldn't normally see interactions between, but that is where the prose of the movie does end, and the voice acting is decent. It isn't, like, spectacular. Most of the characters do feel very monotone and quite basic and dry, like the story, but, you know, the voice acting, it's fine. Like I said, like, the pros do end with the character interactions, and that's pretty much it. So, you know, if you do like this sort of hate train that I'm going on, please come back tomorrow to see part 3, which is the final of this sort of Crisis on Infinite Earths trilogy, which I have been doing for DC, trying to take a look at as many DC properties and movies as I can. But other than that, I don't really have much else to say. I am going to give it like a 3 out of 10. I will not watch this again, and I will not recommend this to anybody. I feel like I wasted my time watching this, and I'm just going to go and do it again tonight with the next one. So don't feel sorry for me. I'm doing it to myself at this point, and I kind of deserve what I'm getting, because I'm doing it to myself. I don't recommend you watch this movie, but again, I'm not your mum, your dad, your father, your sister, your brother, your uncle, your aunt, dog, cat, Snake. I'm none of that. I have nothing to do with you. I'm just a stranger on the internet trying to give you advice and trying to save you an hour and 37 minutes to go watch a maybe better film, which you might enjoy more. But again, as I said, other than that, I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye bye.